Good day, ma'am. I am Edeline Sibibis, second year BS Criminology from Section Delta. So for today's video, I'm going to discuss the rules in the selection of COR and the Delta. So by the way, Delta po and COR yung napili ko. So let's start. Okay, so I am going first to discuss what is COR. Okay, so COR is considered the center of the innermost of the pattern, and COR is also called the inner terminus or inner point of the fingerprint pattern. Okay, so rules in the selection of COR in a loop pattern. So it means po this rule is only applicable if the pattern involved is the loop type of pattern lang po. Okay, so let's proceed the rule number 1 in selection of COR. Okay, so the rule number 1 says that the COR is placed upon or within the innermost sufficient record. So basically, the rule number 1 telling us kung aha na to makita si COR. Okay, so I have here the loop type of pattern. So I'm going to illustrate para mas masabtan kung asa to malocate si COR. So mo ni sila tong ginatawag nga mga sufficient record. Kini sila mo ni sila mga ginatawag na sufficient record. Kini para sufficient records, syempre dapat na shoulder para maging sufficient record. Okay, so rule number 1 says the COR is located sa pinakaloob. So may pinakaloob dire. So syempre dire the center, pinakaloob daw sa center. So si COR po ay makikita natin within or upon the innermost sufficient record. So kini dire ang atong ginatawag nga dire nato malocate si COR. So na dire si COR. So let's proceed the rule number 2. So the rule number 2 says when the innermost sufficient record contains no ending ridge or rod rising as high the sufficient of the loop, so the COR is placed at the shoulder of the loop farther from the delta. So rule number 2 says just in case this innermost sufficient record walay ridges or rod nga naa sa sulod, kini wala ni sila. By the way, mo ni sila itong ginatawag ng mga rods. Kung wala ni sila, so asa makita si COR. Then rule number 2 saying that COR is placed at the shoulder of the loop farther from the delta. So we have here the delta, and we have here shoulder number 1 and shoulder number 2. So aha man diri ang farther from the delta. So mo ni siya tong delta. So of course si number 2 ay number 1 I mean, because ang 2 is nearest man siya sa delta. So ang gipangita dili is farther from the delta man daw. So si 1 ang atong mo ni siya ang atong COR. Okay, so let's proceed the rule number 3. Rule number 3 says when the innermost sufficient record contains an even number of rods as high as the shoulder of the loop, the COR is placed at the end of the center rod. So, ang atong keywords diri sa rule number 3 is uneven. Mga uneven number like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 nga na example. Okay, so example, natay 5 ka mga rods sulod sa innermost sufficient recurve. So, ang giingon sa rule number 3, if the innermost sufficient recurve contains uneven number of rods, the core is placed at the end of center of the center rod. So if there are 5 rods, so malamang ang center rods nato is si number 3. Si number 3 siya ang sentro sa 5. So therefore, si number 3 mo ni siya ang core nato. So let's proceed the rule number 4, the last rule of the selection of the core. Rule number 4 says that when there are 2 rods in center, the one that has the higher shoulder line, the upper point of that ridge is considered as a point of core. So we have 2 rods. We have 2 rods here. 1 and 2. 1, 2. So the rule number 4 stated that one that has the higher shoulder line, the upper point of that ridge is considered as a point of core. So we have here 1 rod and 2 rod. So si number 2, siya may higher, as you can see, siya diri ang atong core. Okay? So si number 2 mo ni siya ang atong core na po dire sa rule number 4. So we are done discussing about the rules in the selection of core. So let's move on. Dito naman tayo sa rules in the selection of delta. Okay, so what is delta? Delta is a point on a ridge or in front of the nearest center of the divergence of 2 type lines. So delta also called the outer terminus. So kung si core is the inner terminus, si delta naman ay tinatawag na outer terminus. So si delta po ay makikita natin doon sa divergence of 2 type lines. So this is kini mo ni mga 2 type lines na to. So if this is the point of 2 type lines, so therefore mo ni siya ang point of 2 type lines, so therefore si delta can be located in this area. Okay, so diri nato makita si delta. Okay, so unsa day hitsura ni delta? Okay, so ingon pa si delta, it's either a bifurcation. Delta is either a ridge end, or delta is either a dot, or a short ridge, or a converging range. Okay, so how if doon sa point of divergence of 2 type lines, there gonna be a lot of possible deltas? So to answer that question, we have here the rules in the selection of delta. The rule number 1 in the selection of delta saying that the delta may not be located at the bifurcation which does not open towards the core. So para mas masabtan jud, let me illustrate. Okay, so as you notice, we have here 2 bifurcation, the bifurcation number 1 and the bifurcation number 2, and this is our core. Okay, so when we say bifurcation, is splitting of one ridge into two or more branches. Okay, so the rule number 1 says that the delta may not be located at the bifurcation which does not open towards the core. So makita ninyo man diri ang bifurcation nga naka-open towards the core. Okay, so si number 1 ba? No, si number 2. At ang awaos, ito siya naka-open sa core. So si number 2, siya diri atong ginatawag nga siya ang atong delta. Okay. Okay, so ano naman itong rule number 2? So the rule number 2 says when there is a choice between bifurcation and another type of deltas, the bifurcation must be selected. So let me illustrate again. Okay, so as you notice, we have here a lot of deltas. So we have here a short ridge, a dot, a bifurcation, a converging ridge, and a ridge ending. So asa man diri atong piliun nga delta nga daghan man ni sila. Okay, so the rule number 2 says that when there is a choice between bifurcation and other type of delta, so the bifurcation must be selected. Okay, klaro kayo no nga kung daghan pa daw mga deltas dira, dapat daw ang bifurcation daw must be selected. So si bifurcation ang ato ang delta gihapon diri. Okay, so let's proceed to rule number 3. So rule number 3 says that when there are series of bifurcation opening towards the core, the nearest of the core must be selected. So as you notice again, we have here bifurcation. We have here a series of bifurcation. So we have here bifurcation number 1, bifurcation number 2, and bifurcation number 3, and bifurcation number 4. So ingon pa sa rule number 3, so when there are a series of bifurcation opening towards the core, the nearest of the core must be selected daw. So sa ilang upat, ahaman diri ang pinaka-nearest sa core. So si number 1. Okay? Si number 1 siya man ang pinakaduol sa core. So siya ang atong delta. Okay, so let's proceed the rule number 4. Rule number 4 says when there are two or more deltas that conforms to the definition, the delta nearest to the core must be selected. So we have here the possible delta number 1, the dot, possible delta number 2, the short ridge, and the possible delta number 3, the ridge ending. So rule number 3, so asa diri ang atong delta? Asa ka diri sa tulo? Rule number 3 says when there are two or more deltas that conforms to the definition, the delta nearest to the core must be selected. So si dot mao ni siya ang atong delta. No, siya atong delta dire. Kaya siya may pinakaduol sa core. Muna siya ang ingon sa rule number 4. Let's proceed the last rule. So the rule number 5 says the delta may not be located at the middle of the ridge running between the two type lines, but at the nearer end only. So we have here point of divergence. Dire atong point of divergence. Muna dire. So diri unta si delta, pero kay dili man na pwede sa middle of the ridge. So dapat nasa ridge ending siya. So we have here ridge end number 1, and ridge end number 2. So the question is, asa sa duha ang piliun nga delta? The rule says, kung asa ang ridge end na malapit doon sa point of the divergence in two-type line. In this case, kini siya atong piliun nga delta, simply because this ridge ending is more closer from the point of divergence into type lines. Okay? So, mo to siya ang rule number 5. That's all for today's discussion about the rules in the selection of a core and a delta. So, I hope you understand, guys. Thank you. Thank you and God bless.